Let's see here. And once again, Layer1Live
We
coming
did
at
it.
you. What's your catchphrase? Let's get it.
Let's get it.
Let's get it.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
get it. Let's get another episode of Layer1Live, man. We do not have Dimitri today. He is all tied up in some other deals, but we're gonna have another dynamic duo. Have we ever done? I guess we're always doing the interviews together, man.
yeah.
Anyways, what's going on?
What's going on, man? It's beautiful day here in Pittsburgh. Yeah, we are missing Dima. He's out running errands or making vodka in his bathtub or something super important. So we're gonna lock it down here. We got some big news. We have what could potentially be the biggest week in crypto if we see an ETF approved on Wednesday. The Simpsons is talking crypto. Decentraland launched.
A lot of
Morgan Stanley might be getting into crypto. Yeah, we got a lot.
It's gonna be a good episode, man, and I'm gonna miss you guys this week. I think you guys are gonna hop on to the episode tomorrow with Doug Petcanix from Live Peer, but before that, we do have to get through this episode. It's gonna be an abbreviated episode, probably about an hour, 15 hour and a half. But let me go through some stats real quick because I do like to do that. Right to start out, we've got top 5 countries by listens. That's going to be U.S. We've got Great Britain. We've got Canada is number 3, Sweden is number 4, and Australia coming in at number 5, as well as the top 3 episodes, which is our interview with Pool Together, our interview with Leighton Cusack from Pool Together, that is. Peter Key, that's going to be from Liquid Apps, as well as that Kane Warwick episode is pulling in at number 3 still. I think Mike touched on it there. We have upcoming guests, Live Peer. We have Eosphere at the end of the week. We have Jesse Proudman from Strix Leviathan, as well as Masari on the 5th of March. So
Nice.
keep coming at it with good guests, and you guys are, as you fill in, we appreciate your support. Please like, comment, subscribe, do everything you need to do on YouTube to help us out.
Yeah, definitely. We're, as you can see by those 4 guests, we're kind of mixing it up a lot, right? We've got Live Peer, which is kind of well known as the most rewarding staker in the game, I guess, with something like 100% staking rewards every year. So we want to get to that with them. Then we're breaking it, all the way down at a detailed level with Eosphere, major block producer there. But then are going to keep it on the kind of data or institutional side as we move into March and April with Masari, and then Jesse Proudman from Strix Leviathan, a pretty impressive hedge fund based out of Seattle. So some good things coming for you for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing some things here over the next minute. Usually we have you and Demon to kind of riff while I share all of our stuff on social media. But right now we will go into the breaking news, man. And you've been really excited about the ETF news for a long time. You really think that could be like a cornerstone of the next step for crypto, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's obviously been many years in the making for a crypto ETF. I think now is the time when I think we actually have a chance for something to get approved. I feel like the SEC and whether you think it's a legitimate reason or not, has been very hesitant to approve an ETF or even say that they're getting close to approving an ETF, because I feel like partly they don't fully understand the market dynamics, and they don't want to get into a situation where the market can be manipulated, and US mom and pops or retail traders who are in this ETF in some way get kind of screwed because Chinese miners have manipulated the market or something.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you have backed coming in, now that you have significant volume, I mean, we saw back in the spring, I think we saw futures volumes on I think it was CME hit $1 billion or $2 billion. And then they hit almost $1 billion again last week. So
Oof.
that kind of institutional wave of sorts is starting to finally hit the shores. So this ETF, essentially what's going to happen is the final approval or denial period is set for Wednesday, the 26th. So we should know by end of week what happens here. It's from Wilshire Phoenix, and then the New York Stock Exchange via Arca Invest. It's not the same Arca that's in crypto. It's a different name. So it's, it's not the Winklevi. It's, it's well-known traditional investment folks, if you will. And they, interestingly enough, in order to cut down on some of the volatility for Bitcoin, or at least some of the risk, I guess you could say, they're going to set up the ETF in a way where it is composed of Bitcoin and bonds. So as Bitcoin price increases, they're going to cut some of that Bitcoin and layer in bonds. As that volatility increases, they're hoping to kind of help out with some bond purchases here. So there's a little kind of slightly different characteristic versus it just being all Bitcoin. So, we'll see.
Yeah. So when you put this in the dashboard this morning and we were kind of going through it pre-episode, the one question I had was, why is this time different, right? Because we've seen ETF proposals come up. I know you touched on it there, like it's more well-known than maybe the Winklevoss twins kind of saying, hey, let's set up this ETF. But why is this time different? And, what will make it successful?
Well, interestingly enough, in this article from CoinDesk, the SEC is kind of answering that question for us in a way.
Okay.
We seem to be paying attention to the filing a little bit more. So, according to some public documents, Crypto Mom, aka Hester Pierce, and some others from the SEC, or at least kind of from that, from that side of the fence, they have all met with Wilshire Phoenix, the New York Stock Exchange ARCA, and their law firms. So, they're kind of trying to understand a bit more. Hey, what's the goal here? What are the risks, right? Where are you guys coming from? Versus when there were 4 or 5 or 6 different ETFs on the table. A lot of it was just them, deny, broad, reasons as to why it's not ready. So
got it.
There's not really one kind of, big point I'm looking at to say, hey, this is why it's going to get approved. I think it's going to be a lot of little things that at least give us a better chance.
Got it. Yeah. That's probably one of my favorite terms that you use all the time, the institutionalization of crypto. I love hearing you talk about that on the podcast, and I think we are getting to that point where, it's becoming more legitimate. It's a step-by-step process. It's not going to be like a waterfall all at once. But, I've got the next piece of news. But before I do, we've got some guys filling in the chat. We've got AdsCan2. He says, keep up the good work, guys. We've got this first-time user, Dmitry Chesnikov, in the chat. Hey, Dmitry, what's going on? Thanks for coming on the channel. He says, hello, win Dimitri's desk. We don't know. Usually it's at 5:05. Sometimes it's pushed back.
Usually pushed back.
Usually pushed back. And then we have Scott Harris Firestone listening to us from work. But he says, good morning, guys. Let us know what time. You guys would love Layer1Live, because I know we're doing this a little early today. But if we can get more of you guys on early in the morning, maybe that's what we go to. And Dimitri can get a good night's sleep, maybe go to bed early, like 9 p.m., 10 p.m., maybe get up a little early. But anyways, we've got Shopify joining the Libra Association. So as you guys know, Facebook has created or is planning to create a stablecoin, backed by a lot of different things in a basket, but mainly USD, right? So we've had a lot of companies that initially joined the alliance to back Libra, like PayPal, like MasterCard, like Visa. These companies have all dropped out, right? So I feel like Libra is almost been like bleeding for the past probably like 3 or 4 months. Not a lot of good news since they've went to Capitol Hill and kind of pitched this idea to the senators and congressmen there. But Shopify, in a blog post, actually came out, I believe it was yesterday. Let me make sure based on this date. No, February 21st. So 3 days ago, they came out with a blog post and said, hey, we are joining the Libra Association. We're all about, making sure e-commerce is available to the entire world and not just maybe people who have a stable, currency that they can transact with and access the internet. Libra makes sense for Shopify, and it's good to see, Shopify actually stopping this bleeding that was happening with Libra.
Yeah, it's a couple things here. I mean, Libra, for all that people hate on Facebook, I think is going to be a good thing for crypto, and good thing for Bitcoin especially, whether or not it kind of launches or not. I think it has drawn enough attention to digital currencies and crypto and kind of this incoming wave of technology into the financial industry that no matter what, I think it's made its impact felt. But it, at the end of the day, it is obviously good to see them finally get a win, right? It's been nothing but bad news, nothing but Zuck having to sit in front of Congress and get, berated for basically Facebook's ineptitude, not anything to do with Libra. So, that's kind of the first thought there. The other one that I always kind of chuckle about is that I can't help but go back to the Social Network movie and the war between the Winklevi and Zuckerberg and how that is kind of playing out now. Obviously, much different stages of their lives, right? Both are billionaires now, but it's kind of hilarious, right? Like you have the Winklevi who have Gemini, the exchange, which hasn't really done well. You've got their GUSD stablecoin, which is not super used. They've come out and done some retail things. I think it was around Consensus last year that they launched the kind of what was it, the payment checkout stuff with Whole Foods and Target and everybody, and obviously that didn't really ever kind of do anything. So if the Winklevi are first and have all these ideas, but then Zuck comes in and just completely kills it with Libra, it's just gonna be such a blow for those guys. So
that will be there. Yeah, if he comes in with like the second round knockout here, that would be absolutely nuts. I like your point that even if Libra doesn't launch, which I don't think it will within the next foreseeable time frame, but even just being in the news and being associated with Facebook, although Facebook has been on the wrong side of a lot of news pieces lately, even just being mentioned in that same breath is good for crypto. So I do agree with that. We'll see where Libra goes, but this is definitely a good piece of news. I know we were thinking about doing like bullish or bearish. This is definitely bullish news for Libra coin, but we'll go into quick news now. We're gonna like fire through these. These are basically lightning rounds. There's a couple that I would have liked to touch on a little bit more. This Decentraland launch was really cool. I hopped in there and was pleasantly surprised at what's going on there. But Adscan2 is in the chat. He says, this is a good time for me. Adscan2, let us know if you want Dimitri on these, because we could totally just, have it be me and Mike going forward, and you guys let us know. But anyways, let's hop into quick news. We did have that big Simpsons episode. I think the episode was named Frink Coin, and we had a really cool segment that pretty much explained blockchain, and it was just like a cryptocurrency little like 1 or 2 minute like portion where you kind of like had blockchain explanation essentially via a cartoon, right? So I guess the guy from Big Bang Theory, Jim Parsons, was there, and he was explaining crypto via a educational video within this episode. Really cool. I mean, obviously Simpsons is like one of the biggest cartoons, probably the biggest cartoon of all time, even though I don't know the stats on it now, but still really cool to see crypto be a part of the Simpsons, man.
Yeah, and just real quick, I thought it was super cool. I haven't seen the episode yet, but I'm definitely gonna tune in. I guess the it wasn't just kind of like an ad in the middle of the episode. Like the episode had a plot and whatnot, and it was that Professor Frink was trying to get everybody involved in cryptocurrency and whatnot, and as it kind of grew and this Frink coin grew, he ended up being richer than Mr. Burns.
Okay.
Got it. They got some other cool things like South Park does there too. But shout out to the Simpsons pushing us along.
Awesome, man. Well, I got this Decentraland launch here. So obviously, as you guys know, I mean, this was a big piece of news within the crypto industry. So if you didn't know this, you need to get on your news game here. But Decentraland launched last week on the Ethereum network. This is one of the longest standing teams. Maybe not, but like from that 2017 and 18 kind of ICO craze, this is one that we've been waiting for a long time, because they did raise money through ICO, and the mainnet, took about 2 years up to this point to almost launch. So I did get a chance to go into the world. There is like obviously avatars that you can create. They're working with Ethereum name service to make sure that you have like obviously like accounts, and these names are actually going to be NFTs tradable between Ethereum wallets. So that's actually really cool news. Like you can almost have an account that you could trade between two wallets. But anyways, hopped into Decentraland. It was really cool. I hadn't been like actually in the world. I know it's been in beta for a little while. But I hadn't actually jumped into the world, and I really liked, seeing the diversity there. I'm super bullish on metaverses. I think this is kind of like the first iteration. The graphics aren't as good as you would like,
Right.
but seeing this world launch, and I think they're doing like 100K giveaway and like various prizes where you have like items stored around the world. That's pretty cool. It's very empty right now. I saw like maybe one person. We like looked at each other for a second and then like walked on. But
hello, friend.
yeah. But we'll see where it goes, man. It's cool to see Decentraland get launched.
Yeah.
I'm super excited for that team.
Do you have any land?
No, I don't have any land. I know land prices have been skyrocketing over the past like 4 or 5 months, just in anticipation of this launch. But and I think they did like 600K in volume, I think last week, just in like sales alone, like NFT volume. So no, do not own any land. We'll see where it goes. I was kind of waiting for that post mainnet dip to maybe like look at the world, see what I wanted, and then obviously prices will probably fall as hype around that launch decreases.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of launches. It's nice.
For
Good
sure.
to see.
Yeah. So I have the SIA network. We talked about this pre-episode, and you kind of schooled me on SIA network a little bit. But basically, the Nebulous team launched, via the SIA network, launched a platform called a Skynet. So basically, you'll be able to, have file storage kind of in the same light that you would on Amazon Web Services, but with less cost and better speed. If you want to touch on this, you can, because you obviously like put this story in the dashboard. But basically, this has been a long time coming for the SIA network, and they launched this decentralized cloud storage network. And you specifically talked about there being kind of a run on cloud storage and like decentralized cloud storage in crypto. So if you want to touch on that, you can. But it's good to see. I mean, they had their ICO like what, in 2014. So
2014, man, they're OGs. Yeah, I was saying before we started, I remember meeting one of the founders in line at Consensus a few years ago when the line was like 2 or 3 hours long, and he was kind of trying to get to know people. So it's good to see them finally launch this, decentralized file sharing service. Storage is heating up essentially, right? So SIA Network seems to be hitting the market hard here now, finally, essentially saying that it's going to be cheaper and faster than AWS, and allow people to say run nodes via this new decentralized file sharing or kind of storage network. But then you also have Filecoin, who is supposedly finally launching their mainnet in March. So, all kind of different a bit, but all around this file sharing or decentralized storage network here. So good to see SIA doing that. We got a few other quick news points here that I'm just going to run through. Sweden is another one to add to the list of countries testing or looking into a central bank digital currency. There was another one that I think Dimitri sent over this morning. It was Turkey. Turkey is also going to be launching.
Good old Turk coin.
Yeah, a little Turk coin in 2020. So Turkey, Sweden, add them to the list of other countries looking at digital currencies of some form. Second piece of news here from me: if you haven't heard of FTX yet, you might be now. They are officially the 5th largest exchange by volume. FTX comes from a pretty large and well-known hedge fund in the crypto space called Alameda Research. There's a gentleman who started Alameda, who comes from a pretty prominent hedge fund in the traditional financial space, and it seems that the exchange they launched alongside Alameda is doing pretty well. So the latest numbers show that Huobi is in first as far as volume goes, then OKX, Binance, BitMEX, and FTX. So FTX has jumped Bybit, they've jumped HitBTC, Deribit, Coinbase, Bitflyer, pretty significant there. Really, and they've done it on leveraged tokens and these kind of hilarious derivatives, right? So they now have an actual token that trades between 0 cents and $1, that will basically give you exposure to the various presidential elects. So they have Trump coin, Biden coin, Bernie coin, Bloomberg coin, Warren coin, all these various coins that they've gotten a lot of press for.
And
So
what are those coins based on? Whether you think they're gonna win, or is it a
yeah,
prediction market?
yeah, it's a
Okay,
prediction market,
got it.
in derivative form. So if some scandal comes out about Bernie and he's currently trading at 65 cents, and that dumps to 32 cents, you can go short Bernie coin, you can go long Bernie coin. It's pretty cool there.
Fun
So
times.
yeah, fun. There's always something to bet on, in crypto.
Did you bet on the Wilder fight this weekend?
I did. Yeah.
You took
I had
Wilder, didn't you?
no, I took Fury.
Okay.
I took him. I had a bunch of different prop bets going. So I took him TO or KO TKO, but I lost so much money on all the different prop bets that
Okay.
Ended up negative. Hell of a fight though. My goodness, that was unbelievable. But yeah, lots to bet on. Now is no longer the time of ICOs or IEOs. It's a time of derivatives and all this fun stuff. So if you haven't checked out FTX, check that out. Final piece of quick news here before we move into talking Cosmos and STOs and some other things in the discussion section. Interestingly enough, alts continue to grow, not just by price, but by overall network and kind of social engagement numbers. The two this week that have seen some pretty solid growth are Chainlink and VeChain. So Chainlink is obviously the master of kind of oracles in the space. They've grown significantly. It is showing that basically they're growing exponentially as the community continues to grow. Both the number of new wallets and the number of holders of the token have increased exponentially over the past few weeks and months. So congrats if you're holding Chainlink there. And then finally, VeChain, they've seen some pretty significant growth on social media. Their engagement numbers have really exploded. We talked a little bit about VeChain a few weeks ago as they continue to launch their partnership with Walmart, where Walmart's using the VeChain blockchain to track various goods and food and whatnot there. So it's if you're holding some VeChain, holding some Chainlink, it seems to be good times for you.
Yeah, I'm in a couple investment group chats, and one of the not I sound like such an ass there, but we're a lot of the talk revolves around whether to be long alts or just like hold Bitcoin, right? Like so as far as like investment philosophy, we're running up maybe into kind of a bull market. Maybe we'll see what happens. I think a lot of people kind of like got scared by this little pullback, but I don't really think that they should have. I think if you watch Dimitri's desk, he breaks that down pretty well. But as far as long alts or long Bitcoin, where do you stand as we run up into a bull market? Because I think the general consensus is that in a bull market, alts probably outperform Bitcoin, whereas in the opposite, you probably want to be majority of the portfolio in Bitcoin.
Yeah, obviously none of this is financial advice, right? We hold many bags, so don't listen to us. But I think Bitcoin, everyone would agree, is a safer investment relative to the entire crypto world, right? I mean, compared to traditional bonds or stocks, it's obviously super risky. But Bitcoin is the one that has the most real usage. It's been around the longest. It's super anti-fragile. But yeah, you're right. I mean, alts this year, even, right? If you want to consider this year kind of the start of a new bull market, alts have outperformed Bitcoin, over these first 2 months. So for me, I hold a little bit of everything. I tend to kind of, hold mostly Bitcoin, and then I'll choose some major cap alts that I think will do well. And then I tend to kind of gamble a bit and try to choose some winners on lower cap alts, which, is a complete shot in the dark generally, and ends up with us holding bags, but it's fun nonetheless if you can hit it right. So
it's true, and I think the thing that we get caught up with in alts is like, and we've been talking about this over like the past couple of months, is like there's literally zero correlation with like fundamentals in alts. I just like it's so ridiculous seeing. I think we had that talk in the IGA. It's like IOST does have great tech, but it's like without the team kind of working and working super hard at doing certain things, it's like the fundamentals really like don't match up. And maybe that's not the best
100%.
example. But I think that's where you kind of get caught, where you could be like, this project has super great fundamentals, they're doing everything right, and then some random ass shitcoin just pumps 100% because of X. So
Yep.
that's the tough part when you're trying to get in from Bitcoin to alts. So anyways, did you have any more breaking news before we or quick news before we hop in?
I don't think so, man. What's going on with Cosmos? It seems, even though per your point, right, fundamentals don't represent price. The price is pumped decently. It got back over $5, but it seems to be a lot of drama behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely, and it has to do with two primary people, right? So you have Zachy Manian and Jaquan, who were basically like the two heads of Tendermint, essentially. So the Tendermint obviously is the tech behind what Cosmos is doing with inter-blockchain communications and interoperability. But basically, in a report, probably, I wouldn't say a report. It was mainly an accusation by Zachy. While he was still part of the team, he basically said that Jaquan was working on this project called Virgo and not working on Cosmos whatsoever. And, a couple weeks have passed since that accusation, and now it looks like Zachy Manian and a hefty amount of developers are leaving Cosmos altogether. And I wouldn't say like leave altogether, because it looks like he may work on Cosmos, but as far as like the Tendermint team and working on the team behind Cosmos itself, they're completely severing ties with that. I think there's a lot of debacle. There's been a lot of things that have happened here that are very like drama like. Between Jaquan and Zachy Manian himself, and those are obviously the two guys that are behind Tendermint. So it's like, what happens to Cosmos here? And Cosmos has a lot of, and in Tendermint itself has a lot of really big investment funds behind him. You have Paradigm, part of that. I know there's a couple others that I'm blanking on right now, but a ton of big investors behind Tendermint. So to have this amount of drama is probably not the best thing, and probably not what those partners in those funds want to see.
Yeah, especially at a time when, as we talked about last week or the week before, Polkadot is picking up a lot of steam, right? It's a pretty direct competitor to Cosmos. Cosmos has had the lead. They've made that giant Binance partnership. They've got a lot of activity, a lot of development happening under the Cosmos network. But I think this will be interesting. I'm not convinced that this will significantly hurt Cosmos, especially when you compare this drama to some of the other drama that other chains have had, like Tezos or EOS, right? They've both really been able to weather the storms around the lawsuits that Tezos had around their ICO, and certainly some of the governance issues that EOS has had. So, it really all started with Jaquan kind of going off the rails. He's had some crazy tweets. He's become like this fundamental, like, Christian crypto Jesus guy. Like he's changed his Twitter handle to Bitcoin Jesus, like JAESUS, as a play on his first name Jay. So it's pretty clear to me that I don't know if he's having like a mental breakdown, or if he's always kind of been just a little out there, but it's pretty clear to me that his actions have hurt kind of the internal Tendermint team. But again, because Cosmos has seen so much success and so many participants coming to it already, I don't think that it's going to really significantly suffer. I think it might slow it down a little bit, but I don't think this is like, a death nail or anything to Cosmos by any means.
Yeah, Atom's down 5% on 24 hours. Obviously, this news came out a little bit more than 24 hours ago, so nothing significant as far as like the token price goes. We did have Brian Kerr from Kava Labs, and that's a huge partner for Cosmos. Obviously, Kava Labs is doing a lot of cool things with DeFi. So having this situation happen, I wonder. They need to get together, right? Like if this continues, I think you'll see probably a lot of platforms be like, hey, the tech's really cool, but I don't think we can deal with like these like feuds at the top of Tendermint. So So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, Zachy said he's still going to be part of Cosmos in one form or another. But for right now, that's basically the news that we have on Cosmos.
Yeah, and that link I just put in the YouTube chat there is a great one. It kind of summarizes the whole story. It's from Decrypt. So if you're listening via audio, you want to check it out, see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You just Google search Decrypt and Cosmos #2 resigns. That should pop up there. But as always, as a bigger project in the space, as a bigger story, as just kind of fun drama to continue to follow, we will keep you guys updated on all things Cosmos. Wanted to touch a little bit here on kind of an STO discussion. I know we don't have our resident trader or institutional guy, if you will, Dimitri, but STOs, it's one that we talked about before, kind of saying, where are STOs? What's going on with STOs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were going to be the replacement for ICOs, and they were going to be this hot new thing, but really we haven't seen, at least on the retail front, any sort of STO growth. I think the most we've seen is Tezos kind of getting some banks to come on board to tokenize real estate deals on the Tezos blockchain. But now, as of these past few days, it seems that things are starting to pop up both in the U.S. and overseas. So we've got two stories here. The first comes from South Korea. So the Bank of Korea is evidently going to be deploying blockchain in their bond market, right? So essentially blockchain-based bonds. It's not really an immediate thing that's going to happen, but it's, I guess, kind of worth the news story that they are aiming to do this. I'm sure there are others that haven't announced that are looking at this as well for some of the cost-cutting measures that blockchain can bring to, say, the bond market. So that's one. The other one is Paxos, which is a top 4 stable coin behind Tether and TUSD and some others. They have announced that they have started settling stock trades on the blockchain. So, Paxos, we've met with them before. We know those folks, super impressive. But now as they continue to expand from crypto first to the more traditional financial system, they have included Societe Generale, Instinet, and Credit Suisse, which are all obviously giant traditional financial players in this blockchain-based stock solution. So, my question to you, right? My question to everybody out there listening, following along is, do you think that we need to see STOs kind of hit on the retail side first, where, the whole retail push has always been, hey, I want to be able to own a portion of art, right? Some sort of tokenized security of some form. I want to own a portion of Apple stock. I want to own a portion of some real estate deal and be able to trade that back and forth, say, as that art appreciates or depreciates in value. Do you think that needs to happen first, or do you think we need to see some of the more strictly blockchain-based merits of cost cutting and eliminating the middleman, especially with equities or bonds? Does that need to happen first to kind of prove the point before people jump in and say, hey, this makes a ton of sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only are we going to get the cost cutting measures, but we're also going to open up all these real estate deals and art deals and various kind of store of value deals to the retail public.
Yeah, I think it has to happen with the latter. It reminds me of the conversation we had with Kane Warwick from Synthetics, and we brought up Kane a lot on the past episodes, and it's for good reason, right? The guy's got a super sharp mind, but I think they were trying to do something with stablecoin. I think in like 2015-16, and basically he was like, yeah, the whole thought was there wouldn't be any regulated stablecoins. And we and then obviously regulated stablecoins became a thing very, very quickly in like 2017 or maybe 18. I'm trying to think, but anyways, it reminds me of that process, right? Like I think it has to happen with the traditional space first, and that'll happen like slowly. I think one of the biggest booms for STOs will be the accredited investor laws getting changed in traditional equities, and who knows how long that takes. But I think when you have like the accredited investor laws being changed to allow people to, I think, get involved in like startup investments, I think you might have a situation where it's like, okay, now retail can get involved in these different processes. So
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't put that together, but that could obviously be a huge influx of people who are now allowed to get into this stuff. So yeah, we shall see. Obviously, it's not the when you're looking at crypto, right? STOs don't really kind of move the market one way or another, but I think
Mhm.
it's worth kind of following along. We generally talk shit on STOs, so
Yeah, I
a
mean,
little bullish news here
yeah,
won't
for
hurt
sure. I
anybody.
mean, so like throwing the question right back at you, like you've obviously been interested in STOs since the ICO alert days. So, what would you say as far as your question? Like, what is the answer there?
I think at some point we will get to tokenized securities. I think it's overblown a bit and hyped up a bit by a lot of people within crypto. I'm not sure it's going to have as much of an impact on traders or your everyday kind of mom and pops
Mm-hmm.
as it will the institutions who are, the brokerages who are selling securities. I think that's going to save them a lot of money. It's going to allow them to do a lot more. I think that the larger impact is that, if you kind of take a few steps back at, look at crypto from 30,000 feet, you see, and I see crypto as this giant gateway for millennials, especially, of getting into investing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at the data, right, most people
With
don't
what
have.
money?
Yeah, well, it's true, right?
Go ahead,
But
go ahead.
even if it's a few $100,
Yeah.
right, and people can turn a few $100 into a few $1,000, or even if they lose it, right, it has gotten millennials and Gen Z interested in the concept of investing, right? Of not just kind of spend, spend, spend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Bitcoin obviously has some, savings components to it. If you want to be a longer term holder, that's the narrative it's pushing forward. So STOs are interesting to me because of this growing millennial generation and of the albeit small but growing amount of capital that millennials are starting to accrue. I think STOs could kind of Trojan horse their way into crypto and be a new route at which millennials get into some of your typical real estate or bond or equity investing.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that, if they start at crypto, they get used to, say, token volatility, they get used to investing in some way. They get used to, say, using Paxos stablecoins, right? And then Paxos comes out and says, hey, not only can you, move out of Bitcoin into Paxos stablecoins, but you can also move from Paxos stablecoins to Apple stock, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't need an ETrade account, or now you don't need a Robinhood account or whatever it is. Just do everything within crypto. We're going to offer it all to you here. That's where I'm, kind of more interested and more excited about STOs, I guess.
I guess in like the traditional equities market, I don't follow obviously like that market as much as I do crypto, right? Like I don't come from a finance background as much as maybe say you or Dima do, but I think like as you see the macro markets like increasingly start to like maybe turn, like
Mm.
we've seen like 10 years or 12 years of just like growth, right? And
Mm-hmm.
especially in the US like stock market, like as you see that trend kind of reverse, I think what you'll see is like I think a lot of firms will, or a lot of people in like traditional equities markets will try to find ways to maybe like have a stimulus, and the stimulus being, let's make it easier for millennials to get into and
Mm.
participate in buying up equities. I think like that seems like a natural route, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And naturally, millennials have uh, a distrust of banks and of authority and of,
Mm-hmm.
of kind of larger institutions or organizations. So yeah, if you can, you're exactly right. If you can package that in a more millennial friendly way and put a bow on top by partnering with, an institution like a Paxos that maybe they trust a bit more, you could definitely see that added stimulus. But I mean, that might be happening. What you said might be happening as we speak, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The traditional markets are getting crushed today, down like over 3%. I think the Dow's down over 3%, and Nasdaq might be as well. So
Yeah.
it's crazy times volatility wise in the traditional markets.
For sure, for sure, and keeping to kind of your nickname here, Mike the Segway Finch. I just made that up on the spot, but keeping part of that, I would love to see the demographics behind ETrade, because obviously ETrade just got acquired by Morgan Stanley. I think it was like one of the biggest acquisitions since the financial crisis in 2008.
12 billion.
Yeah, yes, yeah, 12 billion, 12 to 13 billion, and going along with this story of Morgan Stanley acquiring ETrade, it looks like ETrade's moving into trading crypto. So they're gonna, I think they had like an insider talk with someone from Bloomberg, and basically Bloomberg's reporting that within the foreseeable future, ETrade will start allowing trading of both Bitcoin and Ethereum on their platform. So tying the two together here, you have Morgan Stanley kind of acquiring ETrade, and now ETrade saying, hey, we're possibly going to move into Bitcoin and Ethereum trading. So, you kind of have Morgan Stanley being now tied to cryptocurrency and blockchain. So it's definitely cool. What do you think about this news?
Yeah, it's a little tinfoil hatty. It certainly didn't come from the Wall Street Journal article, right? Wall Street Journal isn't saying that Morgan Stanley's moving into retail crypto trading by any means. This is just us very much speculating and hoping that will kind of be a side effect of this giant purchase by Morgan Stanley. Banks are kind of slowly or quickly moving into retail in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Goldman has done a really good job of this. They've really crushed it over the past few years with new leadership of moving to a more retail focused kind of brand or perspective. They've done a lot of good with Apple, and they released that Apple credit card. And Morgan Stanley seems to be focusing on that as well now with this ETrade purchase. So yeah, who knows when it happens, right? I if anything, the Morgan Stanley purchase might slow down ETrade's ability to launch Bitcoin or Ethereum products. But what I think it could do is act as another one of those kind of Trojan horses into some of these bigger banks, like your Morgan Stanleys, your Merrills, your Goldmans, who have always kind of talked about getting into crypto, whether it was a trading desk or some other sort of kind of brokerage service, but haven't yet jumped in. So if you have ETrade who comes in, they have this giant kind of, let's say 25 to 45-year-old audience or 35 to 55-year-old audience here, who now have the ability to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum where they're currently comfortable buying, equity or primarily equity assets, right? And Morgan Stanley sees this as a growing business and as a already profitable business under ETrade. It might make it a little bit easier for them to pull the trigger on other crypto, based businesses.
I love how those two stories that we just talked about, play together, right? Like we just talked about possibly that STO working and tokenizing kind of security assets and moving that to kind of our generation or the millennial generation and kind of packaging those two together and then having ETrade. I love how those two stories kind of flow together. One thing I really like about Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal is their tendency to like try to kind of have like a causation effect here. So like basically at the end of the article, it's like says something about how Bitcoin dropped 850 or sent the price tumbling. I think it was like 850 million. Let me read it exactly. So it says New York's Attorney General accused the operator of one prominent crypto exchange of hiding the loss of about 850 million, sending Bitcoin's price tumbling. Like that has any effect on the actual price of Bitcoin. So it's right. Funny when they try to make those correlations there.
Yeah, and this is not new news either. It's important to note that this Bloomberg article about ETrade is back from April 2019. So it's been in planning for a little while, and they're talking about Bitfinex there with the New York Attorney General. But yeah, time will tell, right? I think at least my thought has always been that this institutionalization, as you love to hear me talk about, will happen slowly and then all at once. So you kind of slowly have these rumors coming out. You slowly have these plans coming out, and then maybe it's a Bitcoin ETF that kind of lights everything on fire, and then finally you have Goldman's crypto trading desk going live, and Morgan Stanley using ETrade to launch Bitcoin and Ethereum products. So it's 2020 is shaping up to be an interesting year for sure.
You're getting me all worked up here. We need the bear. Where's the bear at? Where's the Ukrainian bear?
Yeah, we need Deem in here to talk some sense into us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for
You sent me this article that you're about to talk about this morning. I think it was no, never mind. Go ahead.
oh, okay. Yeah. So away from the bullish news here, we're going to talk a little bit bearish around what has been scaring everybody for the most part, and that's the coronavirus. So obviously, coronavirus, right? It's hurt the traditional market in a lot of ways, especially today, right? The fears around coronavirus screwing up supply networks, or especially manufacturing in China, has been kind of the reason for this big traditional financial drop of over about 3% in most markets today. But all in all, to date, it's kind of helped Bitcoin in a lot of ways. It's pumped up gold, right? Gold is at some crazy high, like 7-month or 7-year high, and Bitcoin has moved decently well with gold. It's been more or less correlated this year with gold. I know we're down to about 9,600 today, but it seems like there might be some kind of lasting effects that, as theorized in Masari's newsletter, Ryan Selkis, the CEO and founder of Masari, has a great newsletter. If you're not signed up, check it out, masari.io. Like we said, we're going to have them on the podcast here soon. But anyway, in this newsletter, he theorized that the coronavirus could actually hurt Bitcoin because 3 major mining companies, Bitmain, MicroBT, which has been taking a chunk out of Bitmain's kind of dominance already, and then Canaan, which is a publicly traded company, have all felt the effects of the coronavirus because chip manufacturers in China have not been able to pump out the microprocessors or whatnot that they normally have been able to. So his theory was basically that because both MicroBT and Canaan are Chinese based, their offices, their mining plants, everything, right, are all based in China. And if you can't have workers come in and this continues to get worse, all at a time when the halving is a little bit more than 2 months out, could we have an instance where some of the largest miners get crushed by the coronavirus and maybe after the halving event are, say, forced to sell a ton of Bitcoin to kind of support some of the cash flow that they haven't been getting because of the coronavirus here. The other point he theorized was that Bitmain is actually a little more hedged than MicroBT or Canaan. Bitmain has some employees in Japan and in Taiwan, I believe, were the 2 areas that he referenced. Not that those aren't hit by the coronavirus, just that they're not as significantly hampered as China is. So, again, talking with whether it's Morgan Stanley getting into crypto trading or it's, the coronavirus here potentially hurting some of the largest Chinese miners, obviously all tinfoil hatting here, but that's it's what we love to do on Layer1Live. So what do you think? Do you think this is a risk or is this just, a little too much kind of paranoia?
Well, I think for one thing, the Bitcoin miners are getting hit pretty hard here as we come up to the halving and dealing with this loss of efficiency of their products, right? Like, one of the interesting points that came out in that article was that a lot of the mining firms are publicly traded now, correct? So like we can now see like what's actually going on within those companies instead of just like kind of like you're saying tinfoil hatting and kind of guessing. Obviously they're being hurt. We'll see. I think coronavirus is like a definite issue, right? Like if you're gonna have a loss of efficiency and then you have that loss of profit, then you have the Bitcoin halving. I don't see how this. I don't feel like it is a tinfoil hat situation. Like this seems legitimate, right? Like the coronavirus is actually influencing their ability to push out their products. So what were you actually asking as far as tinfoil hat?
I guess the tinfoil, it's less of a tinfoil hat, and I guess it's more of a kind of like looking down the road to see if the halving or halvening, right, whatever you want to call it, alongside the coronavirus could actually be a super bearish event for crypto, right? So yeah, I think it's factual to a lot of degrees to say that these Chinese-based miners are getting hurt because of the coronavirus, but we have yet to obviously see whether or not the halving could end up being a bearish event because of some of these other issues that these miners have. So that's my thought, right?
Yeah.
Are we actually continuing in this bear market here on this, downward
Mm-hmm.
trend from 20K, into what would be a very rough time for crypto as the halving comes here, and rough time for miners? Or is this just kind of a flash in the pan and another hurdle that Bitcoin and these miners are going to get over?
I have to add some type of history every episode, but it reminds me kind of World War II, right? Like you had a situation, and you could say World War I as well, that kind of led to the U.S. like dominance in the global markets, where you kind of had European countries kind of ravaged and their economies obviously hurt, whereas the U.S. kind of definitely didn't feel the same effects. I think that's where you see the coronavirus kind of play out, because obviously the hash power has been predominantly in China for the longest time. And basically what Masari is saying here is like those Chinese miners are the ones being affected, right? Like you see the hash rate in Texas start to pick up over the past, and that's part of that article as well. Like that's where I think the coronavirus plays out. It's like, okay, now you're actually hurting a geographical area, which is China. You're hurting the mining firms there, whereas the ones in Texas are relatively unharmed. In the same way that the U.S. was unharmed in World War I, World War II, it allows the diversity of hash rate kind of to flow more towards the U.S. and maybe go a little bit away from what you see in China right now.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I didn't think about that, but yeah, so it could almost be just a nice coincidence for U.S. miners to get in and get going and earn some Bitcoin.
There's your tinfoil hat. U.S. Bitcoin miners actually influenced coronavirus in China.
That's what Dimitri's thinking right now for sure. He's like, I knew it.
Got it. Okay, well, we'll hop out of that story there. But good conversation, man. That was a great question, and I appreciate you filling me in there. But let me hit the chat really quick. We had a bunch of people obviously come in. Bonds Arcanon actually said that he made a post about our episode on Voice. So
nice.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Voice a little bit later. I'll definitely voice your post, Bonds.
Hey.
For those of you that aren't familiar, obviously EOS or Block One, the team behind EOS, launched their social media platform, at least in beta form, about a week and a half ago. So we'll get into that. Ads Can 2's in there. There's a bunch of people talking about Voice and whether it's legitimate or really cool, or what they think about it. They're saying it's like kind of like gambling. It's kind of like a game. And then Scott Harris is talking about Lysol killing coronavirus. So he he is surrounded by cans of Lysol at this moment. But anyways, so we've got Bitcoin Cash, guys. We've got Ethereum. We'll talk EOS. I do want to hear something. We don't have any Binance news on the dashboard, but I do want to hear what you think about Binance and Malta and the situation that's happening there. We don't have a link, obviously, because it's not on the dash. But anyways, we'll start with Bitcoin Cash. We talked about this story, I think, a month and a half ago. And I guess most of Bitcoin Cash, at least the miners on Bitcoin Cash, proposed that a tax should be implemented. And basically this tax would go towards a pool that they can kind of use as a foundation to further Bitcoin Cash development. So that was the reason behind this tax. And now what you see is a bunch of people, you might see a fork, essentially, is what the story is all about, right? Like the community is kind of at odds with one another, where you have Bitcoin ABC kind of coming out and saying, hey, this is what's going to happen, whereas a lot of others, so initially the tax was put out as 12.5%. Then it was kind of said, hey, like maybe the backlash is correct and we'll reduce it to 5%. And now you still have half of the community essentially saying, no, we don't want this tax to be implemented at all. Also, part of that community, part of that latter community is Roger Ver. So you have a ton of people at odds with each other within the Bitcoin Cash community, and we will see what happens. It looks like Mike's headed out. I don't know where the heck he's going, but that leaves me to talk about this Bitcoin Cash situation. So it will be interesting to see like if there's a fork of the Bitcoin Cash community. Obviously, Bitcoin Cash is in and of itself a fork, but essentially that's what's going on there. So if you guys have any comments, I know Bitcoin Cash is like a smaller community. We probably don't have many Bitcoin Cash members or community members in this chat right now, but if you guys do have comments obviously we want to hear them. We'll talk about ETH here in a second. I think Tim Draper is actually is getting more involved in the Aragon ecosystem. I think EOS is having a Binance situation with Binance Stake, and then we have Liquid Apps releasing DApp accounts, and then we'll finish up with that Binance Malta news. But again, guys, appreciate you guys in the chat right now. Dimitri, I wish you were here while we wait for Mike to come back from doing this. You here? Look at him. Damn, you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Damn, you really. I was not prepared for that, man. I was in the middle of talking about Bitcoin Cash. Like, I'm gonna make a full discussion on this topic. It was at least we could have left on EOS, but anyways.
No worries. Yeah, I had somebody banging on the door outside. It was driving me nuts. So,
okay.
Yeah, no, the Bitcoin Cash piece. I really wanted to touch on this. You know, Bitcoin Cash has had all this drama. I know we've talked before about the miner tax, but one of the symptoms of these forks, if this does happen, where you have some nodes who, you know, want to see a 5% tax, some who don't want to see it, and we do see some sort of contentious hard fork, is that you would have, I would imagine, another type of token minted, right? So if you hold Bitcoin Cash, then in this case, you would get some of that other token, which if it has enough support and it's not, you know, just it's not somebody kind of trying to scheme everybody at the end of the day, and it is kind of a what could be a longer lasting token. You've got Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Cash ABC or something, right? Could we see people go and buy up Bitcoin Cash in order to get a part of that fork? I think that's why that's what people theorize a lot of the Bitcoin pump was back during the Bitcoin Cash fork, is that people wanted to get some of those tokens, and then once they had the tokens, they sold off not just the Bitcoin Cash they got for free, but the Bitcoin as well. So I don't really, to me, right, like Bitcoin Cash has never been super interesting. I know it's got some really nice speed to it, and kind of ease of use is there a bit, scalability is there, but all in all, I don't really care too much about Bitcoin Cash unless we do see this hard fork, and I think there could be some broader market implications because of that.
Yeah, I haven't been a proponent of Bitcoin Cash, nor have I been a proponent of Roger Ver, just from the outside, right? I think the reason this story is interesting is because of like the governance aspect, right? Like you have a bunch of these people that are distributed all over the world, and you have this protocol that needs to have be governed, right? Like if you want to have a proposal like a tax, well, where do these taxes go? Right? Like who benefits from this tax? And I think that's a lot of the pushback from the community. It's like, it's like in general, right? Like it's like in regular everyday life. I'm being taxed. Where do my tax dollars go? And a lot of times, because it's a human institution, there's faulty aspects of this. So I think that's the concern from the people that have pushed back on this proposal. Is like, okay, money is being taken out of my pocket, and I think there's a lack of trust, right? Like we have decentralized situations here, and you want to be trustless. But now with this implementation of the tax, who's actually figuring out where all of this pool of money is being put towards, right? Like, what if there's a vote and they have a majority of the network's vote, and the pool of $1 million that's accrued just goes to another miner that has the biggest hash rate,
or gets burned or something,
or something like that. It's like, we're gonna have this pool, and it sounds like a great idea, push development forward, but who's actually in control of the funds once they're in that pool?
Yeah. I think it would be one thing if it was outside money coming in to the ecosystem, to the Bitcoin Cash community, but because it is nodes who would lose money and have to vote on losing money, it becomes quite a bit tougher, especially with the halving this year, right? It's just it's a bad year for this to be proposed. If it's next year, right, nodes are a little more, miners are a little more comfortable with the new halving rate, and the new issuance rate, essentially mining rate, whatever you want to call it. But this year, I mean, it seems like poor timing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you're right. I think a lot of it revolves around the not knowing where your money would go. I think that plays a lot into it, right? Like they're talking about like, okay, if you're actually taking money, it makes sense, but I don't trust where this is going to be spent. So on top of what you're already saying.
Yeah, and that thought as well is also theorizing that any of these miners actually give a shit where the community goes, right? Like they might just be mining to cash in. How many of these miners are Bitcoin miners that are just running Bitcoin Cash because it's more
Yeah.
profitable than Bitcoin?
I
So
guess the theory there would be that a foundation that can put money towards development, the token price accrues in value.
yeah,
It's like, okay. But
yeah,
anyways, tinfoil hat, small tinfoil hat off. But it's a really cool governance situation that's happening on Bitcoin Cash. So we've got Ethereum, then we got EOS, and then we'll hit Binance, and we're out.
yeah. I feel like we have done probably the best job ever of segueing into each story as you talk about governance on Bitcoin Cash here.
Totally
Draper is in
planned.
the news. Yeah, totally planned. Draper's in the news again for being a whale. We talked a few weeks ago about how all the way back in, I think it was 2014, Draper got a ton of flack for buying Bitcoin at like 300 some dollars because everybody thought it was going to go back to $50. Now, flash forward today, he's made hundreds of millions of dollars on that Bitcoin that he bought via auction. So maybe this is another one of those scenarios, but he has essentially made himself a governance whale in the Aragon ecosystem.
Mm.
I think whenever that news came out, you had a point that summed up this story well, at least for me, was that, wow, haven't heard a lot about Aragon recently, right? They were basically an ETH based, I think, prediction network, I believe, of some kind. It's hard to remember, but they're an older school crypto company, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and now have gotten essentially Tim Draper to take 1 million ANT, which is the token stake, so it's worth about $760,000 in their new decentralized governance project. So the theory is that basically, this Aragon court, where any token holder with 1,000 ANT tokens can participate in this decentralized kind of governance court. The thought is that came out. Draper saw it and was like, "Oh my goodness, this makes so much sense," and kind of jumped in. To me, it seems like he probably already had some exposure to Aragon, whether it was the tokens or equity or something like that. It's just me kind of reading through the lines here a little bit, and now he's getting a little more involved as Aragon hasn't really been in the news lately. So he's invested in the founders' other startups. There was like an email immutability startup called Stampery that Luis Quende, I believe is how you pronounce his name, started. So there's a relationship there already, right? I don't think that Draper was scrolling CoinMarketCap and clicked on Aragon and was like, "Oh, Aragon Court, let me dump $750,000 in here." He's a smart guy. I'm sure he's got a broader based plan, which is bullish for Aragon, but it seems very planned to me.
Yeah, volume's up like crazy on the actual token itself, and I think on the news, which it was released on the 19th, I think on CoinDesk, I think it was trading around 75 cents, and now it's at about $1.20. So the market definitely reacted favorably to that news. We'll see what it does long term. I think a quote from the article, Draper says, "I think the recent launch of Aragon Court and the realization that Aragon can be to governance what Bitcoin is to money prompted him to join this situation." So be interesting to see what happens with Aragon. I know that you're right. Like, we haven't heard anything from since I remember 2017, I think, was when I think they raised money through ICO at that point.
Yeah, they remind me of like an Augur. Augur is who I was thinking of. Augur's the prediction market, right? It's like ton of press, ton of hype coming out. ETH based project when ETH was killing it, and then they just kind of fall to the wayside. And some of them, like Aragon seemingly has, continue to build while others die. So there's going to be, I think, a handful of projects that kind of come out of quote unquote nowhere, at least for what has been the last 18 to 24 months, like Decentraland, like Aragon, like Sia, and actually come through and deliver and hopefully push some people's bags north.
So are they trying to make an out of the box product for DAOs? Because I'm reading it says attempting to build a digital judicial system for decentralized autonomous organizations. Is this just like an out of the box thing? It's like, oh, you want to create a DAO? Here it is. Is that what Aragon's trying to do?
It might be. I haven't really followed Aragon much, so it's hard to say. But in a time where there's a ton of money under, various project umbrellas,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine DAOs start to grow in popularity. So if Aragon can somehow use their own token to, as you said, kind of, white label a DAO,
Mm-hmm.
and it's efficient for folks somehow, that could be pretty big. But
Okay.
it's tough, right? When you have let's say you have a synthetics with their own tokens, how do you create a DAO using the Aragon token,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, if that's what they're going for. So anyway, really Draper in the news there, kind of bringing Aragon back from the dead. We got some EOS news here, and then we're pretty much done for this week anyway. Looks like Bitcoin is dropped now down to about 95. So
Mm.
if you're cutting out now to buy or sell, we totally understand. But essentially, some rumors here with EOS that Binance has essentially officially been registered on the EOS mainnet as a block producer.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, exchanges are definitely in the business of block production. They're definitely in the business of staking, as we've talked about with Coinbase and Tezos before. But while Binance hasn't mentioned anything about taking part in the EOS block producer election kind of process, right? They've popped up. So you're a resident EOS fan here. And the question I want to pose to you is essentially, will this be good for EOS, right? Is Binance joining in positive, or is this negative in that, if we have yet another exchange as a top 5 or top 10 block producer on EOS, will that only just kind of push out those who are actually doing things for the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think time will tell, but we've seen exchanges be part of these ecosystems and not really contribute. Now that's tough on the exchanges, right? Like they bring in liquidity to the actual network token. So I would probably say I'm more bearish on Binance actually being part of this network. I don't think I just don't think they all have the bandwidth to like be part of all these different networks that they're joining. So as far as pushing out people who are actually doing like heads down work on EOS and being pushed out because Binance is essentially taking like I wouldn't even know how much of the actual total vote is actually going to stake on Binance.
Yeah, it looks like, so if you want to take a look, it looks like their block producer is called Binance Stake, Stake. As of the time of writing the article, which was February 21st at 6 a.m. Eastern, Binance was ranked 74th with 9 million votes and a vote rate of 0.085%. Obviously, there's got to be a ton of EOS that users have on Binance, so they can continue to move up the list there.
Yeah, let me see where they're at. But go ahead.
Yeah, let's get the live numbers. Yeah, for sure. Good thought. But yeah, when I look at all the exchanges, when I look at Bitfinex, Huobi, OKX, and then Binance really as kind of the top 4 Asian-based exchanges, Binance to me is one that actually might have the bandwidth to help out. The problem more for me is that I think Binance hasn't significantly invested in EOS in any way. Right. Obviously, they're partners with Cosmos because they're using Cosmos SDK. There's some edgeware rumors that they lock dropped some users ETH for the edgeware lock drop. They kind of make all of these really easy, simple investments into various products outside of even their IEO setup. But because they haven't really done that with EOS, it's hard for me to know why Binance would go out of their way to develop something on the EOS blockchain versus their own.
Yeah. What's super interesting is right before this news dropped, that Binance stake had like popped up, right? Because I don't think an announcement has come from Binance even as of yet. Like there's
Correct.
nothing.
Yeah.
I think they're 70, by the way, so they moved up 4 spots since time of this article. So what was really funny is they put out a Binance report on EOS like 5 days before, talking about whether EOS was too centralized. You know how the Binance does those reports on those networks? Well, they put out their report and then came to Binance Stake. So a bunch of people in the community were kind of speculating on whether they were trying to maybe. I'm not even going to get into that debate actually, because I think they were saying that they were like trying to FUD the actual network so that they could get some tokens at a certain price. But anyways, what do you guys think, man? Because I know we have a ton of people following EOS. What do you think EOS, Binance getting into EOS block production means for the rest of the community? Is it good? Is it bad? Generally, I would think that Binance probably, because they haven't really been a part of the network before, it doesn't mean that they can't do it in the future, but it just, to me, it seems like they're just looking at this from a money perspective, right? They're not really trying to like get involved in this actual network and push it forward. They just have a shit ton of EOS tokens, on their platform, and they'll look to, make a run at top block producer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing to remember is that whether it's block production on a kind of not more centralized, but more restricted network like Cosmos or EOS, where there can only be so many block producers, or it's one like a Tezos where it doesn't matter as much under their proof of stake model. This is revenue that is not directly correlated to users coming on their exchange and buying and selling cryptocurrency and them taking fees, right? So it's this new revenue model that exchanges are able to utilize, and one that's not as correlated to this trading volume. And that's big, right? I mean, Coinbase has made a giant push into Tezos because of that. Binance has made giant pushes into block production and lending and staking because of that. Huobi, OKX, Bitfinex, right? Everybody has done that, and I think they'll continue to do that. It's just, it's just kind of a mystery as to whether or not it will end up hurting or helping that network.
Yeah, 1-2's in the chat. He says, I told you guys that Binance was going to be a block producer, and yes, this will be good for EOS, because if they don't, it will be crypto suicide. Not sure what the latter part of that sentence. Kind of break that down. Let us know why it will be crypto suicide if they don't get involved with EOS. But we do have a couple more points here on EOS. I do want to hit voice, even though we don't have it. But touch on this disk and whether it's a suitable replacement for RAM, or how it kind of its relationship essentially there.
Yeah, in a similar way, not a ton of information on this. It was just another discovery by Corvin Meyer off der Heide, who's the CTO of Blockchain Solutions. That is his name, Corvin Meyer off der Heide, where he basically says, from what I see, it's not about file storage. It's about cheaper but slower on-chain in-contract storage for computational tasks, and not the storage of large files. Putting hashes on-chain makes sense. And probably that is more affordable with disk than with RAM. So essentially, this new network resource disk popped up. It is on the EOS.io GitHub pages. It's just eosio.kv disk if you want to check it out. And it's referencing a new network resource called disk that will supposedly have higher capacity, higher CPU consumption than its RAM counterpart, which has obviously had its issues on the EOS chain with kind of what's available, and for a while it was freely traded and all this fun stuff. So potentially a solution, or at least an attempt at a solution with this new resource disk. But like I said, not a ton of info yet on kind of what exactly it's going to do, or when it's going to come to fruition, or anything like that.
This plays into your earlier story, right, about file storage. I think a ton of people are trying to do this right now. Talos has dStore. I think obviously Liquid Apps has VRAM. So a ton of people trying to figure out the most efficient way to have file storage, right? I was like scrolling through Twitter, and Zach Gall actually got into like a heated argument with Douglas Horn from over there from Talos. So I'll see if I can link that conversation. Maybe I can. I don't want to like get up all in their business, but it was an interesting situation about like that community members were having on file storage. I think it had a lot to do with the difference between Liquid Apps, who obviously Zach Gall's a community member, and what they're doing with dStore over there on Talos. So super interesting. Along with some of this news, Liquid Apps releases DApp account. We at Sutler Ventures, we were part of, or still a part of, the IOST network, and they tried to do this with OnBlock, correct? We had like an OnBlock situation where you could actually create a wallet with an email address and a password, and you would be able to interact with dApps via this wallet and things like that. Basically onboarding and making it easy to interact with dApps. It helps dApp developers obviously get more users into their platform, but essentially what Liquid Apps released is their version of a non-custodial wallet that can be created just with a username and password. So I was able to do this morning. Basically, you receive an SMS code, you put in your email account, and you have your non-custodial wallet. It's in alpha, so right now you can send EOS and dApp tokens, I believe, and then I think some features that are under construction are going to be voting and staking. So super interesting. I like what Liquid Apps is doing. I think it's super undervalued token, or I guess company. This is not financial advice, guys, but I like what Liquid Apps is doing. Having a non-custodial wallet that you can create with an email address is really cool. I would love to see the technical aspects, because I didn't have a private key at all throughout the entire process. So super interested to see that.
Yeah, it's going to be good usability for those who sign up. Hopefully, I mean that's such a big thing still in crypto, right? UX, UI, what kind of, where is it, right? How do we make it easier for people to join in and mess around with the dApp or mess around with tokens? So yeah, shout out to those guys. If you haven't really heard of Liquid Apps before, we had Pete K on the podcast. I always screw up his last name.
Me too.
We had Pete K on the podcast talking all things Liquid Apps, and just generally talking crypto too. You can see the dude is bright, and the team is super smart over there. So they're pushing forward. Shout out to those guys. Make sure you listen in. But yeah, that's what we got for EOS here.
Yeah, let me hit on voice real quick, because we had a ton of people talking about voice. I got access to the voice beta a little bit after the really cool people got in. I was able to actually be a part of that second wave of accounts. Super easy. Obviously, onboarding if you're okay with KYC. They make you take a photo of your ID. They do all these things. I don't think I had to enter my social security number, but they do make you take a photo of your ID for the authentication, right? The voice platform, we have real users. So, and they make you use your full name. So my Zachary Angel Quezada is literally displayed across my voice platform. They let you have a username. So I'm that full name with CryptoQ is my username. A lot of gamification that I can't go into right now. There's a ton of models being created within this voice platform itself that is all around voicing posts, because this whole model of being someone posts something, you voice it, and then if someone comes in after you and voice the post and makes it go up the ranks, you actually get paid in voice tokens, your initial plus a little bit more. So it was a lot like, do you remember Pixios, the Pixios paint? It's a lot like that. I knew
there was something. Yep.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. So if someone comes in after you and voices a post that you had already voiced, then you get your initial voice tokens back plus a little bit more. This obviously increases as it goes on until someone is finally the top voicer. So
interesting.
Yeah, so I appreciate Scott's in the chat saying I'm listening to UQ. Listen is the follow aspect of this on voice, but just from a UX UI perspective, I like the platform. I think it's a little. It reminds me of Medium, right? Like it's a ton of like big content. It's not like 180 characters and you have what you have here. There's no GIFs. At least in this initial timeline. So to me, just viewing voice, right? I don't think it's ready-made for mass adoption at this point. I think millennials, I think younger people who are using these platforms, they're not into Medium. They're not. They're TikTok, man. Like we've moved from newspaper all the way down the line to TikTok, right? Like consuming this large amount of information, and even before newspapers, books, right? So you have books on this timeline, you have voice, you have TikTok over here. Voice is more on this this end, right? Like towards kind of large content, a lot of text, things like that. Whereas right now, what you see in social media is people just want to consume very small information very quickly. So I think that voice is going to struggle there with their current interface. I know that's a lot to unpack.
Interesting.
But just from being in the app for a little while, it reminds me a little bit of Medium, and I think people that are younger do not want to digest information that way.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I wasn't aware of that gamification aspect of voice. That is super bullish to me. I don't really know how the earning of the voice works, right? I think you need both pieces. I don't think you can expect people to go out and buy voice tokens so that then they can use them to kind of push posts forward. But if there's a way that you can earn voice tokens and that process becomes, more kind of full circle.
Yep. You get 3K to start off with. I don't obviously voice tokens aren't trading. Like I can't assign an actual dollar amount to how many that is, but you get 3K right off the bat.
Gotcha.
So if you're voicing a brand new post, you'll spend about like 5 voice out of that 3,000.
Cool. Okay, nice. So they give you a little allotment, at least in the beta, right? Yeah, I think if there's a way that you can earn them, and then if you want more, you go out and buy them, say on an open market or probably directly from voice, right? Then, I mean, that if voice can become the first to implement the token successfully, and Block One can use some of their money to push, voice to the mainstream and introduce them to this, new kind of tweet to earn setup, if you will. That could be massive. So good to hear there. As a newspaper reader myself, I'm totally cool with voice being a little more wordy.
Get into the beta, man. Get into the beta. I think you would enjoy it. Well, a couple other things just to talk on there. One real quick point is that it's going to also struggle with the fact that it's just EOS users right now. And so like almost all of the posts, at least, in my realm, like even when you don't listen to someone, you see a bunch of posts. So it's not just a blank dashboard as you start. You're seeing a bunch, and it's all EOS, right? So I don't mean to be bearish on EOS. I'm just like, this is the beta. They want feedback. This is my feedback. I'll say one bullish thing on it though. Like there's only a couple times when I've engaged with the internet. I mean, we were too young when we first engaged with the internet. We didn't have any understanding of it. So like, it's hard to kind of like have a single point that really blew your mind, like very visceral reaction. I talked about this with the Decentraland launch. When I was first in WoW, that was a very big moment, right? It was like holy shit, like this just blew my mind. And being on voice, I had that visceral that one of those moments, because you're literally on a platform with only real people, and that's just so much different than the internet as we have it right now. And it really, like, I had a good reaction to it. I don't know if that maybe I'm talking too much in the clouds about this, but it's just like there's certain moments that you have on the internet where you're just like, oh, this is different. Like I actually feel something different. And that's what I feel like with the voice, because literally only real people, and that's not what you get, especially on Twitter. Definitely not on Twitter.
Damn, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Maybe hit up the powers to be in EOS or something and see if I can get into the beta. But,
yeah,
man, that's super interesting, huh?
Yep, definitely cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't mean to get all philosophical there, but we'll hit this Binance news last before we kind of jump in. I think we had Kieran jump in for the first time. So Kieran actually jumped into our Telegram community the other day. We appreciate him joining and kind of having some banter there. So Kieran, this is the first time on Layer1Live. Appreciate you joining. He says, YouTube, why don't you notify me when the stream goes live? Hit the notification bell. Hopefully that'll work. Let's see. Scott is talking about following or listening to me on voice. What else do we got here? Talks about TikTok. Dimitri says, do they still print newspapers? I think they do. Mike's one of the only people that gets them. But we appreciate you guys following along. This last piece of Binance news before we finish up here, Mike, because I think we got like 5 more minutes. Basically, what came out is that Malta Binance is not legally able to kind of have their headquarters there. I think that was the story that came out. They're not able to have their operations there in Malta. And then I guess CZ came out and said that they actually were never there, as far as like a actual like headquartered in Malta. Whereas a lot of the stuff that came out right around the time that they moved to Malta kind of signal that maybe they were headquartered there. What do you think about this story? I know it's not on the dashboard.
Yeah, this is a mess, right? And to me, just another story that Binance is struggling with from a PR perspective. Last week we talked about how they've started having issues with the exchange tech, right? Their order book was not updating on time, and then as of I think it was last week, they had unscheduled maintenance, right? Basically meaning that they found something that required them to shut everything off and go in and fix it. So this is kind of as context, a continuing saga of Binance having issues. If you remember a few months ago, there was a bunch of news that came out about Binance having an office in China that got raided. The block pushed that out, basically said, this is not good for Binance. Police came in, they raided the office, they shut it down, and CZ said the block is lying. These journalists, these crypto journalists, they don't do any research. They just, push out clickbait, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people really supported Binance on that point, myself included, because you have to understand with Binance, they are not a company that has a traditional headquarters. They are very remote, right? So they have people all over the world.
Yep.
But with that being said, these people generally still have, still need somewhere to work. So it is true. It did end up being true that Binance at some point had an office of some sort in China, right? Whether that was like a co-working space where employees worked there, or it was actually an office that you walked in and had a giant Binance sign on it. No one knows. No one will probably ever know. So this seems to me to be very similar to that situation where, Binance came out with Malta. Malta's trying to push for, crypto regulation and in a friendly crypto environment. Binance was right there with them, helping them, I'm sure getting tons of tax breaks and all this. And now seemingly things are changing behind the scenes. Maybe there's a new regulatory authority. Maybe Binance pissed them off. Maybe it's somebody saying this from Malta that shouldn't have said that Binance isn't there. And they've got some sort of, behind the scenes agreement with Malta. And now this is just kind of a PR disaster or blunder. But all in all, it's not good for Binance from a PR perspective, right? I mean, the strength in BNB comes from the strength in Binance. So if Binance starts to have chips in their armor, people start to worry about, where they exist from a regulatory perspective, and they continue to have technical issues, it's not going to be good for, the positivity around BNB that it's seen over the last few months or years.
Yeah, there was that rage with Malta, right, in like 2018, where it was like going to be this blockchain island, and I think what happened here was there was a transition of government officials, right? Like there was that death of that reporter, and maybe that some.
Oh wow!
Did you not hear the story?
No, I didn't hear that part.
Oh yeah, there was a reporter that within Malta, she was Maltese, and basically was reporting on there being corruption within the government, and she ended up dying in a car bomb. And
Jesus,
it came out that like maybe there were some government officials involved, and some of these government officials had involvement within this blockchain movement, right? So like those government officials are now gone, and now these new officials are coming in and like probably laying down the hammer is what I'm guessing is basically saying like, okay, let's come in here, let's see what's actually going on, and so it's not as free flowing as maybe it once was with those other officials.
Yeah, maybe Binance needed a regulatory home for a little while they figured out the Binance US shit, right? They needed some sort of kind of, regulatory protection. And, there was some sort of shaking of hands and exchanging of favors or cash or something. And Malta, these guys said, hey, listen, we're going to be here for another 18 months or 12 months. You do this for us, we'll do this for you. But know that, you can't set up the headquarters here because when, if something goes down and we don't get reelected, you guys are going to be screwed. Who knows?
Yeah,
who knows? We're tinfoil hatting a lot on this episode. We're speculating. If you're looking for hard hitting facts and and CNN type news stories here, we're not the place for you. Just go straight to CoinDesk. But we do love to tinfoil hat and see what could possibly be going on behind the scenes, and I think that's definitely a viable answer.
Yeah. Man, CNN as a bastion of real news, right? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
I was looking for kind of boring, straightforward kind of.
I got you.
News. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, hey, Layer1Live. I know you got to run. It's 1:30. This was awesome, man. This was a good news week. I thought we covered a lot. Guys, we appreciate you following along and commenting the entire time. Please, like, comment, subscribe. Join our Telegram, t.me/SutlerVentures. Sutler Ventures is the team behind Layer 1. So we would love to, have you guys in the chat. We're trying to grow this channel all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. This has been a good one. Hopefully next time by the end of the episode, Bitcoin will be north instead of south, as it is around 9,500 now. But yeah, Scott, Kieran, everybody here, Dimitri, who else do we have here? 1, 2. Thanks everybody for joining in. Again, live peer this week we'll be recording, as well as EOSphere, and then some additionally good guests. We got Dimitri's desk tomorrow. If you're into trading, hit him up there around 5 p.m. I'm sure he'll be a little late, so be patient with him. But yeah, man, it's another good Layer1Live. Maybe it's just me and you from now on.
I think so. We're flip flopping back and forth, seeing what the best fit is. So I like this fit. Be safe on your trip to Dallas. I'll see you guys when you get back. Other than that, God, I had one more thing that I wanted to touch on. Maybe I'll just have to hit it afterwards. Next Monday, Layer1Live. We talked about it as a team. We're gonna kind of switch up the format a little bit of Layer1Live. I know we didn't have all three, so we couldn't get it done. But we're gonna kind of make it a little bit more interactive, a little more descriptive, I would say, to kind of like make you guys have an easier time following along Layer1Live. You guys have been doing a good job, but we're gonna make it easier for you guys to follow along. So, anyways,
for sure.
Let's get
Until next time.